Procurement. Oh, dear God. I could talk for about 15 hours on this topic alone. I'm trying to just pull a few key points in this time frame that we have here. But their mission is to play a game with you. It's to play a game with not only agencies, but with all quote unquote vendors or suppliers. The growing influence of procurement is driving, as you would imagine, even more trends. And we see these trends taking hold even at companies that don't yet have procurement. Procurement-like trends are showing up. And particularly as it relates to competitive reviews and as it relates to negotiations. I have a quote here that two procurement people independently made at our conference in New York. They were speaking to our agency audience. Negotiating with agencies is like lambs to the slaughter. When we talk to procurement people, they will talk about how easy it is to negotiate with agency executives. Procurement executives are highly skilled, highly trained negotiators. Most agency executives, some have, but most have no negotiation skills training, and you are beat before the game has even begun. So, as I mentioned, they're playing a game with you to make you think it's only about price in the decision. Here's the other statement that those procurement executives made to follow up the nasty one. When you win, subject to negotiations with procurement, the momentum is actually all on your side. Our job is to make you think it isn't. I love that. You've actually got more momentum than you think you do, but their job is to make you think you are hanging on by a thread. Negotiations 101. They smell the fear that agencies have. They've noted the sort of fear and sense of desperation in the agency business, mainly because of the kind of recession that we've come through, and they are consciously taking advantage of it. Like the proverbial schoolyard bullies, they are taking advantage of the fear, the desperation, that need that they can feel across the table of that person, that agency, wanting to do anything, whatever it'll take, to get that contract signed. New to the report this year, and I'm only going to spend just a couple of minutes on this, but I wanted to reference a few key negotiation trends or tactics. Now, the truth is, some of these tactics have actually been around for a few years, but I think agencies are only starting to recognize them now. There's a few here that are key. So, when you're sitting across the table from a procurement executive, maybe a senior marketing executive that's also very skilled in negotiations, maybe a CFO, there's a script that they follow. One thing that they will say right away, the price is too high. You could say, you know what, we're going to do this pro bono. Pro bono, we'll do it for free. They still have to say, because of the script, that's too high. Because now they're thinking, if you're willing to do it for free, I bet we could get you to pay us. Wouldn't that be amazing? So no matter what you put on the table, you will always hear that response. They must say that response. I think they've given some kind of pledge that they have to. Never accept the first offer. I mean, that's negotiations 101. Never accept it out of the gate. Procurement's become really bad about comparing the supplier, pardon me for using that language, it's their language, to fake pricing models and inaccurate comparisons. So they will talk about how you're more expensive than the others that they're looking at, or some sort of industry standards. It is perfectly acceptable, and we finally see agencies doing this now, that if they play that card, ask to see those other models. Ask to see those other agencies, what the numbers are, what the scope is, and what the difference is. We hear from procurement executives that this is a tactic that they use, knowing that often it's a completely different scope, different remit. It's not as relevant as they want to make you believe. This is a bluff, and you need to call them on it, and you need to have them put the paperwork in front of you. Good cop, bad cop, believe it or not, yes, this still exists. The mean person that beats the crap out of you, and then the nicer person sort of gives you a bit of a wink that, don't worry, he's tough to work with. We'll figure it out. I'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. And then you sort of succumb to that person. The whiteboard fake. This is a newer one that I think it's been around for a while, but we've only started recently to hear it used on agencies. Listen to this is like draconian stuff. So imagine you're walking into the room at the client to sit down with procurement and negotiate. But as you walk, so you've been selected as the winning agency subject to these final negotiations. You walk in. As you walk into the room, there's a whiteboard, maybe a flip chart, maybe a sheet of paper on the table listing 3 or 4 other agencies, competitors of yours, and you are number 2 or number 3 on the list. So you walk in, you see this on the flip chart, the procurement person walks over, damn it, you weren't, and they turn the board right away, like you weren't supposed to see that. And you're like, oh my God, we're in the 3rd position. Holy crap, I'm gonna have to really dig in with this. It is the simplest negotiation tactic. I'm sure that when procurement executives are going to negotiation school, they must laugh and tell stories about these different tactics they've used on their suppliers. Again, not very nice stuff, but you need to get some even basic negotiation skills training because of these tactics that are being used. Scope creep. Scope creep is a negotiation tactic. It's not an accident. Scope creep, particularly with procurement, is conscious. It's a premeditated negotiation strategy to secure more value from suppliers. It's not an accident that happened to take place later down the road. Now, as obvious as that sounds in hindsight, I never even thought of that as being premeditated until we started to hear it from procurement and client executives just recently. This is nasty. And playing the gatekeeper role, blocking all the access to everyone else on the team is also a tactic because it gives them the control. And they don't want to allow you to gain access that will provide you with information, which is power and leverage. They don't want you talking to other people because you'll be able to better flesh out their bluffs. Everything they say and everything they do is part of the game. More suppliers, more agencies in reviews, more roster agencies now, more project work. They believe that project work keeps things more competitive. We'll have everybody competing for assignments. So it's just a mess. That relationship security where there was sort of this more AOR relationships, it's just changed quite a bit. Now, media agencies tend to be less project in nature, but they also have another set of challenges in that media agencies, direct marketing agencies, digital in some cases, tends to be more data oriented, and procurement love data. They love numbers. So there's a whole other set of challenges for those particular kinds of agencies. Final pitch presentation rounds now often have more finalists, typically 3 to 4 in the past. We're seeing 5, sometimes 6 or 7 agencies in that final round. And again, procurement is doing it to provide themselves more leverage with the amount of work versus the fee that's being paid. All of this is designed to reduce your power in the negotiation process. Meanwhile, the marketing department, all these additional reviews now need to be called, but they don't have the time and the resources to properly run them. This is another element that's leading to pitch chaos. But this trend we've been reporting for several years now, and it will continue. The notion that the fix is in. You're a favorite or you're a filler agency to meet their pitch participation quota. So what's happening, procurement is forcing the marketing department to call more reviews. They're pushing back saying, I don't have time to run another review. I'm too bloody busy. But they're being told it's policy. You have to do it now. It's the rules. So the client will often locate a favorite or two, because they need to know that at least one or two agencies are going to perform really well in the review. Because if nobody performs well, it makes that client running the review look really bad. So they'll do the due diligence. They'll spend the time to pick at least one, maybe two agencies. The rest, the other 10, 12, 15, maybe 20 that are being invited, they don't have the time to spend hours researching each of those agencies. So the first agency or two will get the call, hey, you guys look like a great agency. Love the work that you've done on these two clients. It applies to our situation in this way. I read a couple of the blog posts. I see a couple of your team members spoke at a conference that I saw. Really, really great work, guys. We'd love to look at working with you. Would you like to participate in the review? They get a call that's very specific in nature. The references to that agency are very specific. The rest of the agencies get the other call. The other call goes something like, hey, you look like a great agency. You got a good client list, good people. Would you like to join the review? We'd like to look at working with you. You're thinking, sounds like you're in love with us. Absolutely, we'd like to participate. And then those agencies join the review, not realizing that they may not have a chance of winning. And even if they do, they're already starting out in the hind pack. They're not one of the favorite agencies. Search consultants absolutely have favorites. They're also pretty nervous. Search consultants are on the decline, in part because of the influence of procurement. As clients now look at agency reviews and say, well, we've actually run quite a number of agency reviews using search consultants. Process looks pretty straightforward now. We'll just do it ourselves. Now we've got this more robust procurement resources, so we'll handle it ourselves. But back to the search consultants, they tend to have favorites that they know will perform well. That said, they do keep track of as broad a group of agencies as they possibly can. The challenge is there's more than 61,000 agencies in the US now. You can't keep track of all 61,000 agencies. So they tend to have that top group. But when it comes to search consultants, what you also have to bear in mind is clients that use search consultants tend to have bigger budgets. That means they're often looking for bigger agencies with more robust resources. So if you're an agency of less than 75 or 100 people, we often recommend not to waste your time against the search consultants unless you have areas of category specialization. We see smaller agencies that will come in with sort of their specialized practice, that sort of positioning, beating agencies that are much larger. But otherwise, being a generalist up against larger generalists is a pretty tough game. You need to remember that when you're getting the phone call to participate in a review, the role of that person is to sell seats. Period. End of story. Unless you're a favorite, they could care less about whether or not you win the review. And there are ways to find this out, but you need to be prepared to engage that person in much more of a robust dialogue about what they're looking for and their perceptions of you. One key misleading impression from procurement is that they are the final decision maker. 9 times out of 10, they are not. They will absolutely lead you to believe that because it gives them more power in the negotiation process. I've heard in the last 6 weeks alone 4 stories of where procurement told the agency they would not receive all of their performance compensation, but the marketing department overrode procurement and gave it to the agency anyways. And the sentiment was, it's not procurement's budget. Don't worry about them. It's my budget. Here you go. So know that they have a lot of power and they have a lot of influence, but they are often not the final one making the decision. Now, And all of this nastiness, there is a little bit of good news to report. One is that around scorecards, scorecards are increasing, but the actual use of them is decreasing. And slowly but surely, in some cases though. And this is what we're hearing, is when a client-side decision maker is really compelled by a particular agency, they will fight for that agency and they will overrule procurement. But if all agencies are relatively equal, all about the same, they're kind of picking their battles. They may not go to battle for you. When they go to battle, they do it in a couple of ways sometimes. One is they'll go head to head with the procurement executive. They'll just say, no, that's our agency. Punt them into negotiations. I want it done in a week and a half, and I want to get rolling with them. They have the power to overpower procurement, but they use it selectively. Here's another way that they go around procurement. So they'll say, they'll gather the team for the final decision-making conversation. They'll gather their internal team around the table. The head of marketing or CEO, if the CEO's been involved, will sit at the head of the table and will say, all right, everybody's got their scorecards. Before we hand in our scorecards, why don't we have a little bit of dialogue about what we've seen over the last couple of days in the different agencies? I'll go first. It's pretty clear that the third agency absolutely nailed it. They are exactly what we need for this reason, and this reason. I think we'd be absolutely remiss to go with one of the other shops that clearly missed the mark. John, why don't you go ahead and jump in? And they go around the table, and you can imagine the table echoes the sentiment of that person that opened the discussion. So the discussion continues around the table, everybody echoing that same sentiment. Then that senior decision maker will say, all right, now, given that we've had some really good discussion, guys, this is really, really great, really insightful stuff. Why don't we all take a couple of minutes and see if we want to update our scorecards based on the conversation that we've had, and then you can pass the scorecards into me. I'll take them. So you can imagine that there's scribbling taking place. The eraser comes out, some numbers are changing again till they get the right agency showing up. We literally hear this happening client side. It's all a bit of a game between marketing and procurement. There's a lot of tension that exists between those two roles. And marketing will engage them when they feel compelled to do so, when it's worth it. But they need to really feel that one agency is significantly stronger than another. So the key implication here with this trend is know that procurement is playing a game with you, and you need to better articulate the business value you bring in category specific terms. Also, when you come back to those metrics that are category specific, those are also metrics that procurement executives better understand on a company by company, client by client basis. When you use those category specific metrics, it's better for you to build leverage and power in that negotiation process. One other piece of advice I'll give you from a negotiating with procurement perspective, this relates to services you might be providing or maybe your labor plan. When you list a line item for an individual or a service, attach the benefit to that line item. For example, management supervisor, $2.29 an hour, whatever it might be. Don't just list it like that. List it as management supervisor, the agency executive accountable for driving your occupancy rate increase, $2.29 an hour. Then, if the procurement executive starts to pull items, we don't need that number of people on the team. We're going to pull that person. You pull the benefit. All right, if we remove this particular management supervisor, it means we will not be able to drive the occupancy rates in the same way. If they pull something, you pull the benefit of that item that they're pulling. It's a very effective negotiation technique.